Hello friend, welcome back to Toyota Maintenance YouTube channel. I have here today in my shop 2012 Toyota Sienna LE. She needs few services and one of them is a rear brake job. At 100,000 miles these rear brake pads got really thin. I'm assuming these are original ones. So let's go see how this can be performed. This is what you see after removing the wheel, and I will start the whole procedure with loosening two 14mm bolts which are holding this caliper on. The top socket has to be the short one because the shock is in the way. So this is the top bolt. So basically what you do, you can a little bit wiggle it, and look, this is made of aluminum. In my opinion, it's extremely light, so you can put it somewhere on the side. The weight of whole caliper is so low, I will be not afraid, just let it sit somewhere instead of hanging it on a special hanger as we normally do, because we want to protect the rubber hose. Now, hopefully you can see how the pads became thin. I will also try to show you again the difference between the outer and inner. If you look, the outer pad is like a 1mm remaining only, yet the inner it's easily 3mm. So we saw this on the previous inspection when the customer was here. And we said, hey, when you will have a time, please come back for that rear brake job. So, and for some of you who wants to do it yourself, you can see the pad nicely super thin. So that's an outer brake pad. Here is the inner one. You just wiggle it out basically. Here is the other one, you can see it hopefully. For some of you who are doing it alone and you guys don't have access to the brake plate to resurface this rotor, there's nothing wrong with these. You might be already start putting the new brake pads back, then you will just push the piston into the caliper, install it back, and you will be done with it on this side. It could be super fast for you. I will not settle for that. I have a shop, I have a brake plate. I will remove this entire part. We will remove the rotor and resurface it so it's perfectly straight. Many shops will offer to the customers not to only replace the brake pads, but they will replace the rotors. They write up the whole job as replacing the rotors. I very highly disagree. I don't know why you will throw away perfectly functioning Toyota rotor and put some aftermarket no-name junk on it when this rotor is perfectly fine and it needs only tiny bit of resurfacing. So I will continue with my big half drive. There are two bolts on the back, 17mm. So I will loosen these, which will allow me to remove this entire part and therefore grant access to the rotor. So this comes off. Here is the whole assembly, and I will right now show you reason for that uneven wear on those brake pads. I immediately saw it after I removed that entire caliper. This top bolt And these are the floating, it's a floating design. This one has still a good loop inside and it keeps nicely floating. Yet this one, it's completely stuck. It stopped. The lubrication dried out or something and doesn't want to move. Let me show you. Only when I push really hard on it, I kind of freed it again. But we will be taking these out and re-lubricating them later. So that was the reason for that uneven wear on those pads. This Sienna is in excellent condition. When I was underneath, you see some parts of engine look almost like brand new, that silver surface. So this was showing the orange color of the rust, but the rotor wasn't rusted to that hub, and it's very easy to remove that entire piece. Here you can see even that entire parking brake assembly. Everything looks really good. I will be just using a brake cleaner to get that dust off before we will install that rotor back. Back to the rotor. When you remove them, you probably can see here is that brake dust, so that's dangerous to our health. Don't breathe it in. Always get rid of that. To prepare this rotor for resurfacing, which I will show you just in a second, I will remove this rubber part because it can interfere with my adapters on the brake light. I will perfectly clean this, both surfaces. That surface rust, will get rid of it. So again, my adapters can perfectly fit on it, and the cut on the rotor will be perfect and straight. Here you can nicely see the brake light doing its job and resurfacing that rotor. Look at this beauty. It needed just one small cut to put it to its former glory. Beautiful, beautiful surface. No need to replace OEM Toyota part. Absolutely not. If you want to see how this brake light works, I did 2-part video on it, how you set it up, how you operate it, and so on. It's on this channel. Let's go and prepare this caliper with the piston for the install. I always use this press, and I put the old pad right here, and you basically start carefully. Again, I don't push any tension on that brake line, and just carefully press that piston inside, which creates space for the new brake pads. There should be minimal resistance when you are turning it. If you cannot turn this, that means the piston is seized in the caliper. Now we can deal with the sliding pins here. So I normally pull them out. And there is this special grease, synthetic brake and caliper grease. And I will always put more of it. And you immediately will start feeling how easily it's moving. This is the one which was hard, I believe. So again, see there's very little remaining. So put a new grease. Pay attention to the dust boot that needs to be seated correctly in the groove where it belongs, because that stops the dust and dirt getting in and compromising its correct function. Now I need to clean this hardware with a steel brush. This is basically how I deal with it. If there was a rust, you can remove this steel hardware, remove the rust underneath it, and then reinstall it. This vehicle, in certain areas, it's like brand new. So I know there is no rust buildup, and I will just make it perfectly clean so the new pads can be perfectly sliding in these guides. Before I will install that rotor back, I will use the anti-seize lubricant on this area where we saw that surface rust. That will prevent it. The rotor will be never sticking to the hub here. That's what we want to prevent. You remember I removed this rubber part, so I will install it back. Here is that new Resurface rotor. Look how it nicely fits there. It's fully seated. I will just for myself put a little bit more of that anti-seize in this area. That's now between the hub, rotor and the rim. After that, I am able to install this back using behind these two 17mm large bolts. I will torque them a lot with that half drive large ratchet. Obviously the reason for that is to prevent these bolts getting loose and creating some problem in the future. So I don't know what's the torque, but yeah, definitely this needs to be pretty snug. They are big bolts, they will not strip easily. Of course, it's a common sense. Sorry, I don't have a torque number. Here you can finally see nicely that mounting clean hardware. Now we need the new brake pads nicely sliding in it. So that's that same grease, very tiny amounts, and just on that sliding area on both sides. You don't want that grease being introduced obviously on the rotor and so on. So you lubricate these and carefully, without making any mess. It's easy to put it in, and I will do the same on the opposite side. For this 2012 Sienna, OEM material of these pads, it's ceramic. So these new pads are very thicker than the worn ones. That's why we were pushing this piston in to create space that it can nicely come around it. And now I will just find correct position. Yeah, a little bit in my way, but we can always manage, huh? So I do it by hand and then again carefully torque it. These bolts are small, so again I don't know that number, I'm sorry for that, but I will not use some huge ratchet. No, this is the opposite. Of course they have to be nicely tight too, but this is way smaller bolt. These are small parts. It will be easy to damage the thread, so I'm gradually tightening it. I'm being careful. If you need the torque for it, I apologize, I don't have it. And now you can see how that whole caliper easily floats there and back, there and back. And when the piston will finally push on the pads, this will be nicely floating around that rotor, and it will be equally wearing inner and outer pad. And because there is this play, there is word of caution for you when you will be done with both sides. It is extremely important before starting the vehicle and backing out or driving forward, whatever you will be doing. You have to pump the brake pedal multiple times in order these pistons come and start pushing on these brake pads. If you don't do that, and it happened many technicians in the past, I know one in person, it's not me, was person who shared it with me. He was in rush, did perfectly the brake job, everything's fine. He checked the brake fluid level in the reservoir, that's another thing. Everything fine. He hop in the car, boom, start the engine, put in reverse. The car started coming from the stall, and now he stepped on the brake. Well, it went all the way to the floor. Step on it again, step a third time, boom, he was already backed into some car which was there. So you have to first make sure that brake pedal is firm, the pistons move back to it, everything is working before putting in the reverse or drive and leaving. Other than that, I mentioned always check the brake fluid level, but basically that's it, the replacement. I always do that break-in procedure on my test drive, try to get it seated. That's a certain procedure to follow, but that's basically it. So I'm going to do the other side. Automatically you always do both sides. And torque the lug nuts, always don't forget to torque lug nuts. This is 120 Newton meters, it's aluminum rim, so for this Sienna, I would say 120 Newton meters, it's perfect. So please be safe if you ever work on your brakes, double, triple check everything before you will go on test drive, because you don't want to hit somebody or get in the accident. Thank you for watching, and have a great day, my friend.